You subscribe to Panda? That's so hot.
Yo, test. Mic is on. All right, welcome everyone. Today, very special episode. I can't believe we actually managed to get 4 out of, I think, 5 wormhole candidates for the CSM on at the same time. For those who wonder, because most people probably aren't too familiar with the names of the players, but more of the groups they're with, because you get dropped by them or something, right? So I'm gonna give everyone like a super short, like minimalistic introduction. Obviously, we're gonna talk about all kinds of stuff, and we'll learn more about them. But to start with, number 1, Evie Kouvo. He is one of the main FCs in Wingspan. And he has been in Wormhole Space for around 5 years, I believe. And then Wingspan is a little bit of a controversial group in Wormhole Space. I think that's fair to say, right? We might just talk about that too. Then the next up would be Mark Resurrectus, who actually, I think, did you run for CSM before?
I did not. I thought about it and then realized it was too much work, so I didn't.
I thought I knew you already from last year from CSM, but like
just got one of those faces.
Yeah, probably. But so Mark is the CEO of one of the best named groups here, I would say. Maybe you've got the best named group actually, the Holy Roman Empire. And he's it's the executor corp for Turbofield or Glory, which is also kind of a nice name.
Turbo is recruiting.
And there you go. Then we've got Winzentowitsch, who is part of the Corp Cheese Party, who are currently in Parabellum. Parabellum, I think, had ties to what's the Russian group again? They disbanded not too long ago.
I'm not sure. Could be no. Disbanded ones, I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, but they're part of a big Russian wormhole community, so probably someone is part of the friend group.
Inner Hell, there you go. Inner Hell. They disbanded. I mean, recently I said that. It's probably a year or 2 ago already. He played since 2012 and in Wormhole since 2015. And I think that's like pretty common on this panel right here. Like most people have like played for a long time, and a long time in Wormhole Space too. And then our 4th guest would be Teddy. He is director at main FC for Foxholers, and has also been playing like pretty much since 2014 and in Wormhole Space since 2016. So also a long time in Wormhole Space. And yeah, there you go. So just everyone has like an idea what groups you guys are with. Let me start with the number one question that I always wonder when people run for CSM, which is, why are you doing this to yourself? Because I think it's a boatload of work for very little recognition in most cases. Some people get more, some people get less recognition. So like who has a good answer to that question? Evie?
Yeah, I can go first. For me, it was I noticed that there's a huge decline in population and the ability for us to find targets, kill them, and all that stuff. And I truly believe that I have a fair stance at increasing our turnover rate, getting more people to come into the space, and getting more day trippers to come in to experience it, and eventually they'll get recruited if they like it. But for me, it was I want to prioritize getting people into the space, whatever means I can, and I believe in the ideas that I have to do it.
Yeah. So do you think it's an overall EVE population issue, or is it just specific to Warm Space?
I'm kind of isolated, to be honest with you. I only do wormhole stuff, so for me, I noticed that there was a decline, and I just go, okay, I gotta do what I can to get more people in here. And there was some changes that happened in the previous few years that really, really hurt corporations and their ability to grow. And I want to do my best to try to give a creative solutions to CCP to get people back in.
All right. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think I echo everything Evie was saying. I mean, it's no secret that the not having a wormhole CSM has been not good for any of us. Whether or not we would actually been able to stem some of the changes that happened over the last year is, I guess, left to be seen. But there is a pretty fundamental issue right now with the state of wormholes in general, and all of that stems from things that have happened while there have been mostly things that have happened while there has been nobody in the room to have that conversation. So when I, and I'm sure the story is the same for a lot of people. When I first kicked off, I talked to a bunch of other directors and a bunch of other CEOs about it, and we basically came to the same conclusion, which was it would be really nice to have somebody there just to say, hey, no, stop, roll that back. And we feel great about our platform. We feel great about what we have planned. I feel pretty good about I want to say this too. I think the biggest thing that we can probably stress, and we're probably going to hear a lot of tonight, is getting a wormholer on CSM. I feel pretty good about everybody in this room right now, to be perfectly honest with you. Except Pando. I don't know about wormhole CSM.
But, he's great with drifter wormholes.
There we go.
Hey, dudes, I'm telling you right now, I want to bet I probe and bookmark more wormholes on a daily basis than you do. I use those shit on wormholes too. So
you almost certainly do more than me because I have people for that.
Anyway. Yeah. So does Pando. Don't let him fool you.
I just lead by example, that's the difference between us two.
I feel good about what we want to do, but more importantly, I just want to make sure that we have somebody there who can say, the changes that you've made have been bad for us. Here's the evidence to prove it. Here are the numbers, and go from there. So,
all right, then, Teddy, you don't want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like Mark and Evie pretty much summed it up completely. The main important thing is that we get someone on. It could be any of us. It could be two of us, hopefully. Even four of us if we could even ever get the votes.
Yeah.
But,
look, I'm just saying, 4 would be very cool.
If you've got the money, I heard Frat was selling their votes, so
we can make that happen.
That is pretty much confirmed.
But yeah, as long as one of us gets in, I think that's kind of all that matters. Like some way for us to channel our frustrations to. There's not really many ways for us to get in contact with CCP in any sort of believable way.
Yeah. Winzentowitsch.
Yeah.
You
By
wanna
the
add
way, you
something?
can call me Vincent. It's shorter
Vincent?
and not that complicated.
Right. Vincent.
Yeah. So for first of all, I think the fact that so many wormhole people are running really shows you that there are so many topics that need to be solved, like filaments, roaching fleets, or it's just stuff where wormholers aren't really happy about it. And so for me personally, what kind of woke me up was the first time that CCP talked about doing the anti-AFK cloaking changes. So I was like, okay, this could potentially ruin wormholes. How could we stop this within the CSM from a wormhole? And that didn't exist. So I was like, okay, maybe I should run. We definitely need someone. And this was the time that I started thinking about that. And then, of course, what everyone else said.
Yeah, so Brisk, who's obviously a friend of mine, he always like tried to be open to wormhole space and kind of made it a little bit of a wormhole, guys, right? Made it always a little bit of a joke, like he's the wormhole representative. Obviously, like it's a bit of a joke, like I said, right? But even if you would have, like, I mean, you're laughing, Mark. Like, I'm just saying.
I don't just I understand. Like, the meme is a good one. Don't get me wrong, but it does sometimes feel like, and I don't want to say this as a criticism of anyone. I like Brisk. Brisk is a nice dude. He's got good feet. There's nothing wrong with Brisk. But it has felt a lot in the last year like the answer has been, well, be happy with what you've got, right? Like, you guys weren't able to come to a conclusion last year about who you wanted to have on CSM, and so you've done this to yourself, and that should just be the end of it. And I don't feel like, not that I think that it's not a problem, because it is a problem, the idea of wormholers not being able to come to an agreement on anything. But that being, the idea of the game, whether or not the game is playable, being predicated on whether or not we can all come to terms on something, seems kind of a crazy position to have, and I don't agree with it.
So I was actually laughing because I too had to think about Brisk's feet and him sitting in the pool. So yeah, like he said, he doesn't want to represent the spooky wormhole peoples anymore. We should get our own CSM, so he doesn't have to do anymore. Because I think it's really hard for people who don't really live there. Like, of course, most of the mechanics aren't that complicated. It's you can look it up, you can get yourself knowledge, and probably most of the famous people or long-term players have some knowledge about wormholes. But in the end, there are so many mechanics that are where you don't know if is it really important, is it something that wormholers will know, or will be how will they react. So that's something that just you can't really take over as a CSM if you don't really have the lifestyle.
Before someone misunderstood what I was trying to say, like, obviously I didn't finish my point. My point was, like, Brisk is open to be like someone you can contact, but how far does that get you, right? He has only the best things in mind. He wants to help, but that might already be too late for certain things, right? If there's the CCP guy walking into the room and says, like, we're gonna do the change ABC, someone in the room has to have the knowledge to predict what change ABC is gonna do to wormhole space. And someone who doesn't live in wormhole space will have a hard time doing that. But in the moment when it counts to say, like, holy shit, this is gonna be like extremely broken in this way, or like this is gonna ruin this, even if he wanted, or like, and he does, like, obviously every CSM, I think every CSM guy on there would want to be that guy, but like, if you don't live in wormhole space, how are you gonna know, right?
Well, not only do you not know, like, immediately, the answer to what they're proposing, but you can't even ask for people's opinions on what they're proposing because you're stuck under NDA. So really, there is no way to reach out and get people's opinions on it even after the fact, let alone before the fact.
One of the major issues with wormhole space, the simple solution oftentimes is going to have a lot of unintended consequences for this space just because of how dynamic it is. So if you just take the simple solution and make it a concrete fix, down the road, it's probably going to become an issue.
Before we get further, though, off topic, I think we missed one last person on why they want to become CSM. Unless Teddy spoke
No.
while I was gone. Did you already talk?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
said.
yeah, I spoke.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't.
It was just a quick
never
point
mind.
because he basically agreed with everything that was said.
All right,
And,
cool.
and I could already tell, like, all four in the room were like, "Yup, that's exactly what I think." So, you know.
All right,
Why-
cool.
what?
I just wanted to make sure everybody had their platform first.
All right. Well, that's exactly what CCP should be doing with CSM, right? That,
Yeah.
you know, making sure there's one warmer guy. So that's something I always thought. If I was like CCP, why not say, okay, with 10 slots and have 8 slots fixed by just the voting system, and those last 2 slots we can just handpick, you know, someone who's running for warm space, someone who's running for high sec if that's missing on those things, so you can actually have a playstyle diverse CSM at the end, right? Or like at least to a degree, right? I think it wouldn't be
guess-
too bad.
Besides from what it looks like, if you do something like this handpicking, what was discussed before in forums with maybe bringing in slots so that you have the fixed playstyle where then people can be voted in, would be that you first have to actually have a way of vetting someone. Is he really a wormhole guy, or is he a nullsec guy that acts as a wormhole guy? He's just like an alpha that got created a month ago. And then we would go over to interesting stuff like, would Evie then consider be a wormhole guy because he doesn't live in them? Like, you would have to make this call as CCP, and I don't really think they can.
And where does the line get drawn, like you said, between what makes someone but at the same time, if you think about it, like if you go through all of the candidates that you have right now, they're pretty much already categorized into null sec, low sec, you know, like RP and wormholer. It's already pretty cut and dry whose strengths are where.
It is.
With that idea as well, Pando, you'd also potentially have issues with CCP favoritism or implication or like accusations of it.
I mean, we could just. Oh, sorry. I was going to say you could just reserve the slot for wormhole, and then you can just vote, and whoever gets the most votes for the wormhole candidate, just fill that slot for a wormholer. But
yeah. So
you do like a panel vote to get your candidates, and then go on.
Essentially, it'd be like the wormhole CSM primary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that did happen, right?
The way it worked before was that they had a primary, you know, internally within a lot of wormhole groups, and then from that primary they determined who was going to be the candidate or the candidates, and I think that's what they did when Exukis was on.
Yeah, it was New Planet and
season 14. They basically all came together and said, we'll have a primary, pick the one candidate, and that'll be our guy, and we'll all push for that one guy.
And I want to add to that, people have to realize even then it wouldn't have been enough just that, right? So you have to organize.
He was also on our ballot.
Yeah, and he got all the init votes on top of it, which was like that little bit that had to push him over. So not only have all the wormholders have to organize and get numbers, but you also have to get some big players involved, I think, to get some backup there, right?
And I think that's kind of what the issue is, and that's why so many people have been talking about pushing for slots, is because in the current CSM meta, you can't just rely on, as nice as it would be to only try to appeal to wormholers. You can't just appeal to wormholers because there aren't enough. Karma Fleet has what, like 8 or 9 entrants itself, so you have to, you know, be willing to work with other groups and appeal to other groups, even if you're not saying like, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to be the init candidate, right? You still want to find a way to get those groups on your side because the math doesn't work out otherwise. And that's not to say that, and I want to be clear about this, that's not to say that wormhole candidates should specifically be wormhole focused only, because like, I can't remember who said it earlier, but any small change to any part of the game changes the rest of the game, you know, by proxy, right? So when you talk about changes to, permanent cloaking, right? that same thing then now applies, well, depending on how it applies to wormholes, can massively overhaul wormholes. Or you talk about something like resist changes. Well, they do this one thing in nullsec, and that makes a lot of sense. But then how does that same thing apply to wormholes? And the opposite is also true. So whoever your wormhole candidate is has to be, have the ear to the ground with, null groups and low groups, and even groups in high sec. I'm sure they're lovely people as well. So it has to go both ways. That being said, having a candidate that is primarily focused on the greater wormhole ecosystem, and having a system in place where we are at least sure to get that one without having to then go vie for the mercy of a much larger block in nullsec, would be, I think, a positive step forward for the process. Though the logistics of it, I'm sure, would need some work.
So
Yeah.
sorry guys, I have to step out now for the CCP interview. I'll be back shortly.
I should have mentioned that right at the beginning, actually, that Vincent has to run off. And guys, all the cameras are gonna be like wrong in a second, and
Sorry
I'm not
for
gonna
that.
fix it. I'm just gonna say that right now because I cropped it at the start, and there's like 6 people on cam. I'm not gonna fix it. When he's coming back, it will fix itself. Right? So don't
The
worry.
Oh my
latest.
God.
So who's becoming who is the question now, I guess.
I'm really interested to see who I become.
So,
Oh,
like
it's just cutting
something.
Teddy in half. I can fix that, actually.
Oh no, Teddy, no.
So something that I think like that I would personally like to see as someone who like has kind of been around the different aspects of space is more integration between it, because I don't like how like polarizing Eve is in the way that you're a high secker or a low secker or a null secker or a wormholer. Like that's like one of the things that I enjoy about, like the drifter holes is being able to like get some experience in wormhole space and like mapping wormholes and stuff like that while being a null secker. And I used to stream with Astarothi, doing like high sec stuff with him, because I was just like, whatever, like I'll figure out what they do for a while, and we ran sites and stuff. And I think, that would also get rid of the need to have like these extremely specialized pigeonholed, representatives, if Eve was just opened up more to be more seamless between the different areas anyway. Like, I like that all of the areas are different. I don't want them to all like be the same or even similar, but more engaging and well-rounded as a game, to where people would be more open, and it would be easier for us to like spread content between all of them.
It's quite a hard one, because wormholes, like living in wormhole space, requires such like a change in mentality and like such a shift in how you live that it kind of becomes incompatible really with other forms of living. You can quite easily move from high sec, low sec, and null sec, but trying to move from like wormhole space mentality to any other form is quite difficult.
And DTM mentions too in the comments right now that it is hard to find candidates with that kind of experience anyway, because it requires so much raw knowledge that a lot of people don't have. Like I will say confidently, there is a lot that I do not know about, the Pochvin meta, for example, right? So I don't want to go into it saying that I'm a Pochvin candidate, because I'm not. I know I spend almost all my time in wormholes. Aside from whenever we go out and mope about and whatever through whatever null hole we find, but I don't spend a whole lot of time in Pochvin. That being said, having a candidate, to your point, that could do all of those things would be great. Whether or not those candidates exist, or whether or not those people would be interested in being candidates, is maybe another story entirely.
So
Yeah.
one of the great things about Wingspan is the fact that we actually base in K-space. We actually interact with a lot of day trippers coming in, and my unique experience with that is something that I get to see in the risk and reward of wormholes and what's actually bringing people into the space. And for me, because I do base in K-space, and the whole corporation is diving wormhole after wormhole after wormhole from random K-spaces all over the universe, we do get to see a fair amount of day trippers come in, and it has slowed down. And there's a lot of changes that happened that really slowed K-space, the reason for K-space to come in.
All right, so what does J-space look like currently? Because like I've been slightly distracted lately, and I didn't
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, I have no idea why. I just didn't pay attention to J-space all that much. So like who's running the show? Is it the J-space Blue Donut? Is that a reality and stuff?
No, but if you look at sort of raw numbers, we're back to around 2018 levels of shit dying. So we spiked last year, surgical strike hit, and then it just plummeted again. This has then led to a lot of USTZ corps leaving. Today, notably, Cryptic Gaming has disbanded quite a large USTZ corps. Whether or not they found other corps and try and continue on, maybe not. Probably just go to nullsec or something, or even just quit the game.
A certain percentage will always leave the game when the group disbands. It's just how it is.
Well, it's just the turnover rate that needs to be fixed. We're not getting enough new people coming in, and it's normal for veterans to eventually disband and leave, and it becomes something new. But we're not getting that rate of people coming in.
I mean, to echo Teddy's point too, something that it needs to probably be said is that I was talking to another CEO after finding out about the Cryptid thing, which is massively disappointing, by the way. Cryptid ran a pretty solid group, and we had a lot of really good run-ins with them, and I'm sad to see them gone. But Cryptid will not be the last one, nor were they the first group to either disband or fall apart, and then for their members to go either find something else to do or just leave. You know what I mean? So that is something that needs to be addressed going forward, because when you ask about who runs the show and whether or not the Blue Donut is in charge, I don't know if that's even really true anymore, because I just don't know if there's that much going on, right? Like, there's certainly plenty of empty space out in wormholes, and there are plenty of people crabbing and stuff. But as far as groups that fight and are active, at least in U.S. time zone, I know EU time zone is a little bit better about this. It is not great. It is pretty barren. We will have a couple fights a week where we have run into groups of 5, 10, 15 if you're lucky. Every now and then we'll run into somebody we know and be able to ping out about connections and get people excited about that. But it is tough, because a lot of the things that have changed in the last couple of months, I guess almost the last year or so, have really stifled what a lot of people really enjoyed about wormholes, and has made it harder for smaller groups to respond to larger forces. And where maybe CCP's intention was for that to, I think when they released Surgical Strike, they said the intention was to make bloodier, more violent fights. And that may be true in nullsec. I'm not sure, what the numbers look like there. I mean, obviously the war has been that, but at least in wormholes, it definitely feels like it has led not so much to more violent fights, but just to less fights. Like, people just aren't undocking, or aren't logging in, period.
Yeah, I think in nullsec it's pretty similar, right?
Yeah.
The war is it's kind of hard to see like what is actually going on because of the war. It's a unique kind of situation. But destruction overall during the war didn't really go up. It went up at the point where the whole like real dev kind of stuff started to happen, right? With NPC keepsters, NPC space keepsters and stuff. But like a real big like increase in destruction, nope. It's pretty stable.
Well, that's like the main thing that I've been saying about like the whole scarcity issue too is that if you make it more risky for someone to lose something, it's not like all it's going to do is make them not want to freaking lose it.
Yeah.
So people aren't going to undock shiny things if they can't replace it. It's not going to increase content.
There's somebody in the comments right now, Pinelore Fuswa just mentioned that the difference between maybe what their intention was and what it is now is that fights just end faster because you either need so much logi to keep, to hold a grid that's half your fleet, and then your DPS numbers are limited, and then you can't you can't bring enough DPS to end a fight, or you don't have enough logi and you just bleed through ships because you everything is nerfed across the board, that the fights themselves aren't bloodier, they just don't happen, or they happen and they're over so quickly that it doesn't make a difference. It's a DPS race, and if you cannot out DPS the other group, it does not matter what tactics you try and bring to the table. You're just screwed from the word go because you have no other options.
Right, and
Yeah.
for smaller groups, you can't field as much logi because they don't have enough pilots skilled into T2 logi and things. They're basically out of the water. There's nothing they can do to compete with another group with 6 logi, and then when trigs were a huge meta, the remote repair that they bring into some of the smaller fights, it's just smaller groups just can't compete.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of reasons for why smaller groups just aren't coming into wormholes to try it anymore.
So the
were you
entry
gonna say,
size
Teddy?
groups. Yeah, Teddy, you go.
Oh.
Yeah, if you look at sort of the deaths of faxes, for example, before and after surgical strike, you had on average about 35 of them dying a month, with most of them being apostles. After that, the first month after surgical strike, it dropped down to 9. It's a 9 a month. Now, some
Yeah.
of those may be rollers, some of those are probably lost in evictions, but pretty much none of them are lost in actual fights.
When was the last time, Teddy, you think you actually saw an apostle get used in an actual fight that wasn't an eviction?
Technically, about 2 weeks ago in a C2 where I killed 2 test faxes.
Okay, fair enough.
But other than that, it's been a year.
Yeah, I mean we've run into them, during evictions. I sat in an apostle myself during the wrong hole eviction, and that was, that is they were only ever on grid because there were no other options than to have them on grid, right? Because they were being evicted. But in casual fights on extra large wormholes, it's just not a thing that happens. Or even inside somebody's home, it's just not a thing that happens because one, as a fax pilot, you're now having to do more things that are more difficult. Your resistances are worse, so you have a harder time keeping yourself alive. The resistances of everybody else in your ship or everybody else in your fleet are also worse. So you have to keep those people alive too. And if a Balgorn gets on grid, you're stuck, right? Or can you swear on the show? I don't know if that's
Yes.
Oh, yes, you can.
Okay.
Swear away.
If a Balgorn gets on grid, you're fucked, because you don't have the cap to do. You have 3 things you can do. You can rep yourself, you can rep your fleet, and you can manage cap against Balgorns. Before the surgical strike changes, you could manage to do those 3 things over a period of time, and then would eventually break, right? Now, if any one of those 3 things falls, you're going to lose, because if you lose cap, you lose the other 2. If you lose your fleet reps, your fleet dies, and if you lose your own reps, you die, right? So what it has done, it has swung the numbers so far away from making faxes a viable part of especially high class gameplay that nobody fields them. They just don't exist. And so what that means is that smaller groups who can field faxes and would actually make, if you have 15 people on grid and a fax, that's that should be a fight that is worth taking. Because if I'm sitting there looking at it, I've got 25 people in my fleet. I'm thinking, oh shit, we can go fight 15 people in a fax. That's awesome. I can maybe get a fax kill and kill those other 15 ships. But if you're that fleet before, if I undock a single Balgorn or 2 Balgorns and bring them over, might as well just stay docked, because there's no sense in having it out there. It's just going to die. And then now, because of scarcity, it's just an expensive kill mail. Because faxes cost, a decent fax right now costs like 7-8 billion isk. So it's just a tight spot, and I understand why the changes were put in the first place. Like, I've read the dev blog, I understand what they were going for, and the ability to jump and then not immediately jump afterwards or not immediately be combat ready afterwards because your jump cap is not so eliminated is fine, I guess. I don't know how much of a difference that's made for you guys, but the fact that we haven't been able to that change has affected wormholes in such a significant way has, I mean, it is currently and actively killing wormhole space. I don't know if there's any other way to say it.
It's effectively ended a playstyle and basically killed high class.
Yeah.
To the point where most active, like, bigger corps, minus like the big two, are in low class because there's 0 point having an extra large wormhole because you won't use caps.
And I mean, it's the ridiculous thing about it is that it's not a change that needed to be made. Like, high class wormhole fights were not broken. The ability to put 4 cap boosters on your fax was not something that caused faxes to not die. I mean, Teddy made a good point. You would still see 30-some die a month. You would expect then, if CCP was trying to do the thing that they wanted to do, you would see more faxes dying after the surgical strike changes because you'd be more people fielding them, and you have these bloodier fights and these more violent fights. But no one's undocking them. No one's doing that. And so then high class groups, to find content other than that, they've had to go out and do other things. And I think all 3 of us here have talked about a laundry list of other content that we could potentially bring to wormholes. But that's all just bandages on what is essentially a gaping wound. And the gaping wound is surgical strike. And if they can't find a way to fix that, or at least mitigate those issues, among others, in wormhole space, you're going to see more things happening, like the thing that happened today with Cryptid. I mean, I talked to another CEO of a big wormhole group, a big high-class wormhole group today, who said that he doesn't know how long he's going to want to stay in the game if we cannot find a way to fix this, because it's just not that much fun.
For example, before I joined Foxholders, I was the CEO of a USTZ core, and about a month after Surgical Strike, when we hadn't found anything, and we'd lost every single fight that we'd fielded because we just couldn't hold against anything, we just decided just to leave. We just unanchored everything and left, and I disbanded the core.
Yeah.
Because there's just nothing you could do. There was no content, and there was nothing we could do.
And plenty of those pilots might go out and find other groups to fly with, maybe. But I think we all can sit here and say, we don't know. We don't believe that that's true. Chances are more likely than not that those pilots aren't going to go out and find other groups to fly with. A lot of them are just going to quit playing.
Yeah, I think about 10% stayed on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wormholers are a special kind of breed that if we don't have wormholes, we're probably just not going to play this game.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Evie.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off the surgical strike change. Blingy Ratters and like C3s disappeared as well. Like, we don't see passive tank rattlesnakes ever. That's a thing of the past. Yeah. That is gone. So you lost an entire group of people who went out and ratted in blingy ships that were fun things to kill and actually put up a decent fight for a small game. Like, a rattlesnake could kill 2, 3, 4 T3s depending on how people were fit. But that's gone. That's gone.
I mean, even blingy tengus and stuff, which was a thing that we used to see ratting all the time. Nobody wants to field them because they are paper tanked at this point.
Yep.
You run into 3 or 4 Kikimoras and you are fucked, and it's just not a fun thing to do. Like, and I understand that it's very easy to say, like, well, you guys have so much money, just field so many more ships. But the issue isn't even just the money, because you can make a lot of money in wormholes. That's not a secret. The money is there, but the fights themselves are not fun. It's not, you don't have fights like, for example, back before Surgical Strike, before we formed Turbo, we were in Prismatic Legion with Be Nice, and we were doing an eviction of this Chinese crab who would go out with 12 nesters and 14 Lashaks or something stupid. And so we were evicting this guy, and we had a big fight with him, and it was great. And then after that, we went over and we had a fight with Cryptid and Singularity Syndicate, right? It was just like in the static of that hole, we found they were doing an eviction of another group. We got involved and had this big fight. The fight itself was probably an hour and 20 minutes long. and it was, there was a lot of logi on grid. It was fine. It lasted forever. And when we both were done, we both pulled out maybe half of our own ships from the fight. They had lost, a third. We had lost about half. We accomplished the objective. Everybody was happy. It was a great fight. We left, right? That fight doesn't happen anymore because we would need double the amount of logi we brought. They would need double the amount of logi we brought. And then the rest of the ships either die because there's not enough logi on grid, or they just sit around shooting each other. But because there's so much logi on grid now, because there has to be so much logi on grid, if you start dropping DPS, you can't. You have to reach, either you have to wait till the logi gets so exhausted they can't keep up, or you're just done, right? Because there's a limit that you have to reach, right? The damage healed per second. And if you cannot get over that lip somehow, either with numbers or tactics, then you're just going to be sitting there shooting each other until you run out of ammo. And a lot of fights either end in, well, this is dumb, we're leaving, or they'll just say, well, they've got too much DPS, there's no way we can keep up with it, and we just leave. There's no point in fighting.
So we got into a stalemate with Eve University. We took a brawl with semi-equal numbers. We formed up, and we only had 2 Oniruses and all of our Drekkiviks for remote repair, and we were up against their Drekkivik fleet and their Guardians, and it was a stalemate. We just said, okay, we only lost to Stratios. He was out of comp. We're leaving. It was like a 40-minute fight of a stalemate.
So to sum it up quickly, especially since Vincent is just coming back, do you think like the resist nerf and the fax changes, like that's like those two are 99% of the reason why Warmwood Space is suffering right now?
Yeah, it really crippled our ability to actually do the type of PvP that we want to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there are other issues too. I have a whole, I had a whole big conversation the other day with somebody about frig holes and how about case-based frig holes are cancerous to wormholes. But when it boils down to it,
I'm going to say anything to that.
Well, I know it's kind of a contentious topic, and a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about it. And whether or not we get into that, I guess, is a whole different thing. But if I were to pick 3 things that are the biggest issues in wormholes right now, the resistance nerf, the fax cap nerf, and maybe the fact that everybody uses hams. I don't know. Maybe 2 things then. Maybe just 2.
Yeah.
The unrollable frickles are a lot of pain for a lot of people in the Warhammer community too.
I've told people in passing, I don't know if this is actually true, but the second tie-dye gets fixed in nullsec, missiles are going to get an entire rework.
You think so?
Because right now with tie-dye, missiles take so long to get there, and the damage is calculated after the fact, because that's just where the math gets prioritized. And you'll be shooting like 1 or 2 volleys in a tie-dye fight, and the target's already dead, you just don't know it yet. But the second tie-dye gets fixed, you're going to realize missiles are just ridiculously overpowered, and then missiles are going to get a total rework.
Everybody's using missiles. Everybody's using missiles.
Cruise missiles are broken, dude.
If you don't have a tie-dye,
it's just like, oh.
A note to people doing small gang stuff: if there's not tie-dye, use missiles. It's going to save you everything.
That fight, Teddy, that you guys had when Be Nice was being evicted, the fight when Be Nice was being evicted, where there were 50 Cruise Praxi on grid just volleying Icky Turses, is the most bonkers thing I've ever seen before in my life. And the fact that nobody watched that fight and then went, yeah, maybe cruise missiles are broken.
The original meme, the whole control fight when they tried to evict us.
Yes,
just deleting Leshaks, like dual plated Leshaks with Praxi, and we had no logi. It was beautiful
because you can't, as a you want to talk about alpha. It's if you are not, and that's another thing. That's why faxes would be beneficial in those fights. You just can't keep up with that much alpha on one grid. It's nuts.
Well, a fax wouldn't have that either, right?
Well, you could at least have somebody pre-locked. if you see somebody getting pre-locked before, because the cruise missiles still take a second to get there, you can lock a shack and start cycling rep. You'd have to be Johnny on the spot about it, but you can lock a fax and start cycling reps as long as everybody's paying attention before those missiles get there, and then you'd probably be able to rep back. Unless they can volley your armor, in which case, you have other fundamental problems.
Yeah, it's simple math at the end of the day, right? Like
Yeah.
cruise missile like damage. It's like for the range they get, which is the key part there, right? If you
Yeah.
if you have to go to
It's so
blaster
good.
range, you can have all the DPS you want. Like, it isn't gonna
Mhm.
do shit. But
Yeah.
the range you can reach 300, or in Praxis is probably a little less, 220, maybe 240.
I think
I
it's
don't know.
Yeah, Praxi have a slightly less range, but they're also one of the only battleships that has a missile damage bonus, like a straight up damage bonus, which is why we chose them. And they're also cheap.
Yeah, they give them to you for free.
And they don't
Yeah.
require any skills.
Yeah, right. Now they do, yeah.
Well,
they
they were in boxes as well. I
Yeah.
put our entire home defense comp in a single busted.
I mean, but that's real. When we first or early, after that fight and the Prismatic Legion fight, one of our directors was like, "Hey guys, Capsuleer Day is coming up. We will straight up buy those Praxi for you, so we don't have to haul the boxes in because, I mean, or rather, we don't have to haul in Praxi, and we'll just take the boxes because the boxes are so valuable. The fact that is a thing is nuts."
Yeah, it's honestly, but like bordering on broken. That you can bring a home defense Praxi in through with an interceptor.
Yeah, but
Nobody
at the
was-
end of the day, I'm always gonna argue. At the end of the day, it might just be broken compared to other battleships, but it's gonna create content. You know what I mean? Someone's
Yeah.
gonna bring them in to fight. So
I have no issue with the fact that Praxi are the Chad battleship because that's very cool and I'm all about it. The issue is more of a fundamental issue with missiles as a whole, and especially after the missile buff. I mean, in all seriousness, the big comps right now are heavy assault legions. Heavy assault legions. I mean, everybody's flying legions. Everybody's flying damnation. You know, it's one of those things where Ichthyrsus were great until they were prohibitively expensive, and now everybody flies heavy assault missile anything.
Well,
Because-
as long as you're not in a system with a specific type, like an advantage to Cerberuses, for example, where they have the range.
Right.
But yeah, the standard
Yeah.
thing would be definitely legions.
I mean, it's just hard. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, for me, it's been constant encounters with sacrileges, damnations, legions, and then unshield doctrines. It's DNIs and Nighthawks.
Oh,
And that's it.
Yeah.
a Nighthawk fleet's a thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's so good.
Man,
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
kind of a mixed. Okay, so this is sort of an existential issue for me because on the one hand, I don't like the fact that everybody's just flying legions and damnations. On the other hand, the changes did make the Nighthawk the absolute Chad command ship, and I know I've said that twice now, but it cannot be more true. There is nothing cooler than that black Pringle out in space doing like 1100 DPS cold, like it's nobody. I mean, it's just so mean. Nighthawk fleets are the moment that null groups realize that nothing can beat Nighthawk fleets.
dude,
I mean, the meta's
250 Munins can beat a Nighthawk fleet. I'm telling you
not
now.
250 Nighthawks.
Oh yes, if you get alpha off the field, Munins are gonna be like.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's-
I don't know if you have to if you put 250 Nighthawks with 250 Munins and you just say, okay, who is gonna hold the field at the end? I don't know. Maybe the Nighthawks would win, right? But
no. Well, the Nighthawks don't have the range. I mean, the range of the Nighthawk is like 16.
well, if you
kilometers.
go heavy assault, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's
On that
the
scale,
thing.
you
That's
can't go heavy assault.
That's where you get that much damage. Is from the
Yeah.
from the ham bonus, the short range weapon bonus from a while back. So I love Nighthawks and I love the Nighthawk fleets. They're so much fun, but they are also endemic of a larger issue, which is that missile.
I mean, that sort of like heavy assault missile meta, it's been meta forever. Even when I first came to One Horse like 5 years ago, the first thing I was told to was train into a ham legion. I think it's more just it's the fundamental thing that hams are a capitalist thing that are guaranteed to hit.
And in null space is a great equalizer. It really is.
And nobody brings like missile guidance disruptors. I cannot tell you how many ships we've been or fleets I've been in where if they had one missile guidance disruptor, they could have wrecked our whole shop.
Does nobody
Because-
bring... Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Does nobody bring a firewall? I'm not sure. I never fired hams, so like I don't know how fast they are, which is the key factor when you want to firewall stuff. But I could imagine 3 firewall like battleships or 2, right? Depending on what numbers you can bring, they could mitigate a shit ton of that damage.
We actually talked about firewall battleships. We like firewall vindicators for like home defense purposes against mass legions or mass sacrilege or mass damnation or something like that. And the answer is yes, you could do it. The short or the catch is it is a difficult thing to do because the timing has to be right. And and firewall ships are not nearly as mobile as that big group of legions is anyway. And because if you're using ham legions, they're sitting right on top of you. And if you're also in a missile doctrine, because that's the meta, then you're just removing your own DPS.
Well,
too.
obviously, you shouldn't bring a missile doctrine
yeah.
if your firewall is sitting on you.
right.
That would be kind of.
I'm going to grab some more water. I'll be right back.
All right.
I might be one of the few people that really miss Inner Hell showing up with a 40-man fleet of Lokis and mutants and just deleting everything you have on grid. I truly miss the days of dying to that fleet. Oh, it was so fun.
The issue is that those Lokis were so quick with the snakes that they ran, and with such a small sig that trying to actually hit them with any meaningful damage was insane. Like the fact that hams wouldn't apply to them. Or even like medium arty wouldn't really apply.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was easy to go up against, but I really do miss the days of just dying to that fleet. Oh, it was so fun. And you'd kill the broadsword and it'd be a billionist broadsword and you'd be like, yes, that was awesome. We actually got a kill on them.
Well,
yeah, they were all so expensive.
Why did they actually disband at the end? Does someone know?
I think it was just internal reasons. I think it's just the natural bell curve.
It's like a mix. Yeah, they do have a YouTube video up, sort of giving showing that they're disbanding.
But yeah,
I feel like people know why, but
sorry, your mic didn't activate. I think people know why.
I feel like people know why, but they don't want to talk about.
Who's that?
You know, by the way, Miranda, I think. Are you talking about the headset mic, or are you talking about the over the your laptop, maybe?
My headset.
All right. Just thought because the mic didn't activate.
Ah.
But people know why. But what did you say then?
But they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to say
There
why.
you go. Much better.
Yeah.
I should have said that earlier. I should have noticed right away. But
It's whatever. Get back to the show.
I think it's with sort of our area space. There's so much sort of knowledge is based on rumor and conjecture that to come onto a show and say exactly why someone disbanded is a pretty hard claim to make and actually be able to back it up.
well, I think no group ever disbanded just because of one specific reason, right? There's always something that leads to the next, and then over time, and a lot of times it's like leadership, right? Leadership is AFK, or leadership decides I can't do this anymore, and there's no one to pick up the whole thing and keep going. So they're like, well, we're disbanding, right? That's most of the time, I think, what happens. But
that's endemic in wormhole space. A lot of wormhole corps are corps of personality, really. Where when that leader then leaves,
not just in normal space,
they just go.
I just got a message from a guy who was in Inner Hell. He was saying that they disbanded. I'm quoting him because they did everything they wanted to do, and then all the targets were gone, the Rourke walls, the capitals, and all that, just because of the CCP nerfs.
Hey, can we agree that we need more Rorquals in wormhole space?
Yeah,
You're on board with that?
So
Or just
nice
out
to
in
have
general, not
Well,
just
Rockers in
wormhole
all
space.
space.
Yeah.
I mean,
I haven't
seriously.
seen a wormhole have a Rourke wall in it since I got the unicorn of a guy who rolled himself out of nullsec and got stuck in a C5 in a Rourke wall. And He was so confused as to what was going on. He actually jettisoned from his Rorqual, and our scout who was watching it was so thrown off by a guy who just jettisoned from a Rorqual. He didn't even think to lock it so that we can get it back.
It doesn't even work like that, because if he locks it, that guy who owns the ship can still jump in. Just nobody else can jump in.
Really?
But, yeah.
Yeah.
We had that
I
before
just-
with the hell. The dude jumped out, and we had the hell locked because we were shooting it. But then obviously, if 100 dudes are shooting a hell, and then suddenly you say stop, there's always like one guy that keeps it locked. So we couldn't jump in. And then by the time maybe people started to unlock the fucking thing, the dude showed up again, warped in, and jumped in again, and then we had to kill it. It's like, well, that was a funny story at least.
Now I guess now that we're on that point too, having other things for things to do in wormhole space, I think could probably go a long way. Because, and I mentioned this on Astrothy's show too, we don't have the responsibility of empire building, right? We don't have that to keep us occupied because we're not out here, we don't do SOV. You're not worried about setting up supply lines and worried, what you are is contained to a fairly small bubble, and then smaller bubbles of farms around that, if you even have those. So all of your content is either coming from stuff you can do, in the area immediately around you, or what you can go and find with other groups. And with the advent of the surgical strike changes, with so many people who just don't undock, evictions have become like the thing, right? I mean, there have been a ton of evictions in the last year. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And not to say that evictions are themselves an evil, because they're not. They're a content driver. It's important for that to be an
like
option.
a symptom.
Well, right. The fact that they are not, the fact that they're the only thing that, they are the end game of wormhole PvP, though they absolutely should not be, because one, they suck. It takes forever to do them, and they're a pain in the ass to run. And I cannot tell you, anybody who's ever really enjoyed the logistics of an eviction, they're not fun. And two, they, you are, of the evictions that I've been a part of, the ones where we've had like an actual decent fight out of it, maybe 1 in 4, right? And then, once you're done, then you've got one group who now is gone. One group who now doesn't functionally exist in wormhole space until they can get set back up again. And it's just not good for anybody. I mean, I like the idea of having evictions option for when somebody really just needs to get slapped, but there has to be something else out there. Like I mentioned before about the ESS bubbles in nullsec, and how cool of a concept that is for content driving. Granted, it's had better or worse responses depending on who you talk to, but having something in wormholes that is something that you can work on as an objective over a shorter period of time, hopefully, than an eviction, which itself is already too long.
Oh yes, it is.
It's just a pain in the ass, right? So being able to do something similar and create content in a way that doesn't require you to roll out a full eviction squad, I think it would be a net good. Rorquals are great for that. They are a big objective that people like to shoot, and they create content. They're just none of them out there because CCP's made the game, put the game in such a state where no one wants to fly them.
No,
because
no
they're
one wants to
expensive.
lose them.
Yeah, you don't. One, they're worse, and two, you don't get.
Yeah.
Especially in wormholes, you don't get anything out of them.
Yeah,
right.
Get our
That's
full
the
means
problem.
they're worthless.
Right.
Like the
Yeah,
biggest
there's
mining
nothing
ship
for
you
us to
can,
mine.
the biggest mining ship you can currently hunt is a prospect, and that's because basically normal mining ships aren't really like you get them, you can kind of sometimes find them, but usually it doesn't make sense, so you don't see a lot of them. And yeah, I think especially that you with the one mining stuff that still is lucrative in wormholes is gas mining, but even then you only have the ventures and the prospects, and I think they're getting the porpoise to actually be better as a boosting ship than the Gnosis would actually help a lot, because it then would at least have the porpoise on the side, And that itself, like imagine it's filled with gas. That's a really big target. It's not, of course, it's not comparable to a Rockwell, but it would drive something more than just trying to catch the next roaching fleet and being disappointed because you couldn't.
I think so. This is probably going back 2 months ago, before all the R4 changes were done and stuff. But I killed a Procure, and straight up, I was getting DMs from people in Corp, just like, "How on earth did you even find a miner? Nobody mines in wormhole space.
Yeah.
It's just it doesn't happen."
Say it with me, friends. 2 words: gas, Rorqual. I mean, think about it. You have a supply or a resource that's become much more valuable recently. Park a Rorqual in that bad boy. You can't panic because there aren't any rocks to hold on to. Yeah, sure, he can clear gas faster. That's awesome. That's great. Having him on grid is cool. Content driver, good resource for making more money for his group, because that's what he's out there trying to do. And want to get more Rorquals out in space. And 2, would bring down the cost of capital ships, because capital ships right now, from a gas point of view, are wildly expensive. There's not enough gas being mined in wormholes right now to keep up with capital production. I saw. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah, so there's one. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You go.
Okay. Yeah. So the one problem with actually getting the porpoise, orca, or even the Rockwell to do gas mining is the problem that in nullsec, which I today only learned that the gas there is also needed for capital production, is that these sites, they actually have AOE damage. So you mine it, and then sometimes they explode. You get thermal and EM damage, I think. And this is gonna kill a lot of drones, I guess. And so if you want to implement that, you actually have to keep in mind that you probably want it to be also usable in null. And I think we should rather, as a CSM, look into getting maybe a Tech 3 mining barge for gas. I would find really funny. Maybe, I don't know, you could also do a precursor mining barge.
Honestly, just making our moons worth it would probably go a long way.
Yeah.
Back when we actually had like good tier minerals, like ore in our moons, you would see like the odd Rork out.
Yep.
You would see Rorks in C1s, where you could eventually just feed enough things into it and they would die.
So I mean, that's what ERB did. ERB would get a Rorqual out, and they would roll off all their holes and VOC all the statics, and they would go out there with a Rorqual. And then you get the new bro who doesn't roll off anything or VOC or notify anybody, and he just says go at his Rorqual without doing anything and dies.
You know, I see that, but at the same time, as someone who obviously likes to hunt Rorquals and stuff, I would always ask, like, how do I catch these guys? If someone does everything right, and usually people learn lessons and do it right, how do I ever get into the wormhole with enough DPS to actually kill that Rorqual, right? You can just roll off all the entries, keep an eye, and just mine forever in like perfect safety.
Well, getting in and then getting out again.
Well, the getting out part is probably easier than getting in.
Yeah, getting out's easy, but you do need to roll into it, right? If say someone's using a Rorqual on a C4, you need to roll a C4 static over and over and over and over again to potentially get in, or it would have to be a wandering connection. And one of the most aggravating things to me about rage rolling is the second you jump through that wormhole, you have a 60-second time of cloak, but the stupid signature pops up notifying people, hey, likely wormhole, clear scrams, a line out and warp. It's so aggravating. We don't have local for a reason. Just delay that signature by 60 seconds. That's all you needed to do to make it significantly easier for us. Drives me nuts.
Yeah,
that would actually be a great change. I didn't even think of doing that.
It drives me up a wall that we don't have local, yet we have a notification system for a likely wormhole.
Oh, it's so much better than it used to be, though. And it used to spawn on both sides at the same time.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't a full 60 seconds, even if it was 30 seconds where you pop in and then you have, a limited amount of time to get all your intel together before it shows, like, any amount of time at that point other than instantly would go a long way. Go ahead.
The really interesting about this is it gives combat recon ships a very unique role in wormhole space. A very unique role. They can jump through, they can warp around system and not be seen, and that signature hasn't spawned yet. It gives them an awesome role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
That would be kind of cool.
And then sorry, I want to come back to like a comment Mark made earlier, which was the filaments, which I haven't heard that from the woman perspective at all, and I can imagine like some of the issues. For example, you can just filament out of woman space, which was surprising to me. Like, so maybe you guys want to like talk about that. Like, what are the issues with filaments actually? Because like rage rolling is kind of like filamenting. You know, that's what
There's
it feels
a lot
like.
of issues with filaments.
Hey, Panda. Filaments are fucked, dude.
Yeah.
They're
So-
really
broken.
Really
When-
broken.
When Singularity Syndicate came and evicted ERB, we took everything and put it in Orcas, DSTs, and other various haulers and just filament the nullsec. And then I went out in a crow and with like 40 other filaments went out and scanned for wormholes in nullsec. If I didn't find a wormhole, I just warped back to them, filament somewhere else, and we moved like 50 to 70 billion out of an eviction that should have went to Singularity. Like
But
hands down, that should have went to Cindy. They did
There's
everything
an even
right.
more tilting part of it where if someone's roaching,
Oh my God.
they can kick the single person that's tackled out of their fleet and take a filament before anything lands on them.
Yep.
I
And
think the
it's-
worst part is though that you can actually filament to Pochwin and then filament to Highsec, so you don't even have to get to nullsec.
Yeah, you don't even have to go to
That's-
nullsec anymore.
Right, yeah, I was
there's
fine with
no
nullsec.
downside.
Who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah, at least in nullsec you had a chance at dying, but going to Pochwin,
I mean, we're
it's
enjoying them.
But
It's
it's like
almost
these are the things
certain.
that's where it's you need a wormhole CSM that says this shit's broken. This shit will be used so hard by anyone that's being evicted or anyone that's crabbing to just do everything in safety.
The problem
Like,
is
if you're rolled out, you just potch from filament, and then you don't need to scan. You don't need to risk going through the chain. You sit in potch from cloak for 15 minutes, and then you're back in high sec. It's decimated the risk versus reward of any part of wormhole space.
the same thing applies to evictors too. Like, I have been in fleets recently where they've said like, okay, everybody, we're going to go out in this eviction fleet. We're going to bring, we're going to have a POS set up. We're going to have an Astra, and so is going to bring 30 filaments. And so if things go belly up for us, we don't have to fight our way out of here. We just filament out and we're done.
Yep.
That way you can bring all kinds of fucking blinged out Lashaks, and you can bring your blingy damnations and your blingy legions or whatever. And then if things don't turn out the way you want, if another group comes in, fuck it, we're done, and leave. There's no fight to get out. You either you go back to your POS, you warp off to a safe, and you filament. And the biggest issue with it, and this is something that gets discussed a lot in the circles that I think we all run in, is the fact that there's no spool up on the filaments. That is the number one issue. If it was just like safe logging, it would maybe be okay, right? Where you have a 60-second or 30-second timer from the moment you start popping it, and then at least then somebody will be able to combat scan you down and come over and find you. That would be something. Right now,
when I first noticed that doing an eviction when we were actually the one evicting, and it was in the end, and it was like the guy in the DST, he just got the filaments, and he was like, well, if you don't have all control, just here, get the filaments, you're gonna be out. And just the realization that you can neither combat probe or stop anyone from doing it. So like literally you're doing an eviction, everyone's there, everyone's like ready to catch anyone, and you can't do it. It's such a joke. You need to do something there.
Yeah. So technically, sorry, I'm just
to piggyback on this. Go. You said.
I just wanted to round this up and say filaments just shouldn't be a thing in moment space. End of story, right?
Either a spool up time or you're gonna have to remove them. For nullsec ones, I'm kind of so-so one because you do have that risk of dying. However, I don't think DSTs, haulers, orcas should be allowed in nullsec filaments at all.
It's the potch filaments that are so bad.
Right.
The issue with that though, if you disallow like transports, you kill the ability for people to use these as blobs. A lot of times we use these to transport our blobs fleets around. So if you don't allow DSTs or the cloaky equivalent,
I don't hate null filaments, because once you get into nullsec, you still have to find your way back, right? And that is still a risk that you have to overcome. Potch filaments are brainless. I had no idea how to use. I had never used one until just a little while ago, where I brought a golem to an eviction because that's a smart thing to do. And when it was all said and done, it didn't go the way we wanted it to go. So we said, okay, well, we're just going to leave. So everybody was out, but me, being a moron, decided to go to bed early. So when I woke up the next day, nobody else was there. Thank God somebody had left the filament inside the station. So I jump inside the Asher, grab the filament, and then all I have to do is undock, warp to a safe, and then I'm gone, baby. I am out. There's no content there. The people we were there to evict had ships sitting on the undock, like waiting for me to go do something. Like they were like, "Oh yeah, this guy in a golem, we're gonna fuck up his day." And I was like, "Nah, bro. I am out. Goodbye." And then I left.
Beating Hull Control in that fight and then watching them leave via filaments was honestly one of the most tilting things in existence. And we had everything paused. Who's waiting to make them fight their way out, or even self-destruct, and just to see them leave.
To carry off that, we took, when I was in wholesale for a brief stint, we took a fight with Hard Knocks. We were in their home hole, and Hard Knocks did everything right. They had multiple groups of combat scanners and dictors trying to get us at safes, and then only one squad of Gilas got caught. That's it. Everyone else was in Pochman home free. And it was the only squad got caught because some guy wasn't changing his safety to yellow or whatever. And we're just like, I straight up was just like, dude, if you don't change that safety, I'm just going to kill you.
Yeah. It's so frustrating because it requires nothing to happen. All you have to do is warp to a safe. The moment you land, you pop it, and you're instantly away from danger because you're in Pochman and nothing's going on there. So all you have to do is, if you are unlucky enough that you have to go to the next system over to buy an exit filament, or if you just have an exit filament in your cargo, you're just done. You're free. Like that's it. That's all you have to do. It's wild that that's an option.
To carry off those, and some of the people that live in Pochman are like, oh, I've seen that go wrong for people. And when I try to convey to them this message, you have escaped certain death. If I got stuck in Hard Knocks home, I should die. I should be dead. The fact that I escaped certain death with a huge margin of success to get back to K-Space is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yes, there is a chance you die at Pochman, but it is significantly safer to go to Pochman than to stay in Hard Knocks home hole and try to avoid an onslaught of combat scanners and dictors.
It's unreal. That needs to be changed.
There's an even more busted part of it, where if you have alpha rollers or rollers with interceptors, you can suicide roll holes whilst you're being evicted. And then if you have a frig hole, you can then just come back in.
Yep.
You just Pochman out, and then you just come back in, and then just suicide roll again.
That fight we had last night, you ended up getting a direct connection to us, and we had an alpha set of rollers come in, crush the whole Pochman.
It's unreal.
It's dirty, but that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, our rolling battleships also carry filaments whenever we think about it. We don't roll that many wormholes, though.
Put this in perspective, you can have an alpha roller praxis ready day one.
Yeah.
That's it. Day one.
You can have
them in
a
a wormhole,
lot of
seed them.
Stuff ready with those million skill points. You can do a lot of stuff, right? For those who know what a ghost bomb is, right? Like that's praxis with smart bombs. You can just lock them off anywhere and just lock them in whenever you need them. It's a powerful little tool. And you can skill them instantly.
We tried to get creative with smart bombing, rolling praxis, and a bunch of alpha characters. And you can just go crush a wormhole, and they want to come back to it. They land, there's no wormhole, smart bomb. That's that.
Oh, I have a question actually that came up the other day. I think 2 days ago or something. So smart bombs on a wormhole, they activate but they don't deal damage, correct? If they're in range to the wormhole.
They don't activate.
They don't activate at all? Was that always like this? I always thought they did activate. So it's like a gate then.
Yeah, I mean it's the range of the smart bomb, because it's not the range of your ship, it's the smart bomb radius, right? If the smart bomb radius overlaps the radius of the hole, you can't activate it.
There's a funny story about this. I was seeding a wormhole, and I knew the group only had smart bombs fit to all their rollers. So I jumped through. They came through with a bunch of Macarials, and I knew they only had smart bombs fit. So I just typed in local. I'm like, man, smart bombs are a bitch, huh? And then just hopped through again. There's nothing they could do.
Because I thought it worked differently to K-Space, because it's obviously it's the same in K-Space then. I thought they activate, but they just don't deal damage. My question was actually, what about normal bombs? Do they deal damage if they hit the the wormhole? They do then,
So,
right?
yeah, they do. Yeah, they
All
do.
right.
Bombs will work. Smart bombs don't work because what CCP doesn't want to have happen is, so the position that happens when you jump through a wormhole is based loosely on the mass of your ship. There is some randomness involved. If you took a smart bombing ship and just popped it on a wormhole of like a high set coming in, you could theoretically, someone comes in, the second they decloak, just kill an explorer immediately. There's nothing that goes into it.
Yeah.
So they made it so that you can't sit directly on a wormhole and smart bomb them off the second they jump through.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can cover the spawns of the wormhole with enough of them.
Yeah,
so
you can
like
get lucky.
you can still do it. It's just you need more thought behind it.
Yeah, you can get lucky with it, but it is a lot more difficult.
Is this the part where we transition into talking about frickholes?
Bring it on.
We can.
Well,
We have
Yeah.
to.
before we go into that, I want to put my view on it, right? People might just think I'm a big fan of them because we used them right when they came out and they came in handy. But like, I totally see the problem with them, changing the entire dynamic of wormhole space, because suddenly you have a woman you cannot roll at all. And just before anyone says like, "Oh, Pando is a big fan of frickholes," like, yeah, well, if I can use them, I really need them. Yeah, I'm a big fan. But in general, I agree. Like,
The only frig hole I like are C13 frig holes. That's it.
yeah. So
Frickholes-
someone's asking, what is a frickhole? Maybe you guys want to just like start there quickly.
So
Yeah,
frickhole is
so-
just a wormhole that you can only fit frigates and destroyers through,
Or a porpoise.
or a porpoise.
Well, yes.
Sure. So they're small, actually very small wormholes. The problem with them is that there is a critical bug that used to exist in the game that you could use to roll frickholes. It took some time to do and was a pain in the ass, and nobody really understood how it worked. Then CCP patched that bug, so now you cannot roll a frickhole, and that's a pretty major part of the wormhole meta, is the ability to roll wormholes. And if you get a frickhole, the frickhole is ostensibly alive for the entire length of the wormhole. Because wormholes decay over time. And then, without a way to get rid of it yourself, you just have to wait it out. And so frigholes have been notoriously used, if they randomly, and they randomly pop up like any other wandering, but they have been famously used to break evictions, because if you are evicting someone and you have hole control and a frighole pops up, all it takes is for the defenders to have their army of 100 buddies come in and interceptors, and then you can pop them in ships, and suddenly now you are wildly outnumbered because of the frickhole. You can't roll it, you can't do anything with it, and if it goes to K-space, there's nothing you can do. The argument that I've heard, because the issue with rolling frickholes is that it was the bug, right? It was the hick bug that lets you do it. And since they removed the bug, there's not really a way that you can go back and reintroduce the bug. But limiting K-space frickholes or eliminating K-space frickholes would maybe be cool, because then all you would have are J-space frickholes, where all you can do is go from one system to another. Then, as the evictor, you still have to burn an entire rolling fleet all the way over to wherever the entrance to the new hole is, then get in there and then get hole control in an entirely different system. So it would still be very difficult for the evictors to deal with, but it would at least be something. Whereas now you're just shit out of luck.
So if you say just remove frickholes in K-space, that's exactly what we talked about at the beginning, right? Now it has consequences for someone like me, who, for example, I want to hunt a certain group. Let's just put a name out there, VVV, right? Winzentowitsch. They like to rock on mine every now and then, but they're so hardcore on rolling wormholes. But there's that one type of wormhole, right? Why is it even a frickhole? It's a destroyer hole, okay, guys? So kickies fit through there. And that's the only chance to reliably know, okay, if we scouted this wormhole, I know I can get there. So I know I can form up and get my guys to that place and get content for everyone, right?
I mean, you could
While
just make
other
frig
formats
holes.
just get rolled.
You can make frig holes spawn at end of life so that they're not up the entirety of an eviction. I mean, that's how I got involved in the wrong hole eviction with wholesale and exit strategy. I came in through the frig hole that spawned in nullsec, and then I helped exit strategy.
Oh, were you at that fight?
Yeah. Yep.
Fight was nuts.
That was an amazing. It was an hour and a half brawl.
So stupid.
Watching
I
the dread fight, like the dread perspective, was literally making me scream.
There was the one
when you guys started using the dreads, we started bleeding Balgorns. We actually hit a point where we had to start using wrong holes Balgorns because we ran out of fit Balgorns. We were just like, this is a shield Balgorn. Screw it. We need the newts. Just get it over here.
There was a
sieging dreads 100 kilometers and trying to shoot things with whores.
The vehement. It was the
die.
vehement. The vehement was sitting 100 kilometers away from the fight, just trying to shoot things with hog guns, doing like 200 damage per volley. It was crazy. But I'm getting off topic.
We actually had a communication issue in that fight. We got booshed off, and we were told to anchor on somebody, but we never received the call to go reapproach. So you actually had this thing where the main where Sin was moving towards the vehement, and then everyone else was moving away. And then we just started bleeding battleships, and we're like, "Oh my god!" So like, stop anchoring on him, anchor on me.
Yeah, so I like. On the one hand, frigate holes are absolutely a content driver, but I don't like anything in the game or anything in wormholes that is a surefire thing. I kind of like the idea of frigate holes that exist or that spawn in at end of life. That way, you don't have the full length of a wormhole to get an entire group of people in. You have basically once you see it, you have to start moving people because here. In a very short period of time, it's just going to be gone, and then that's it, right?
Right. And for the evictors, you still need to get hole control on that, right? It doesn't change the fact that you still need to control what you can. And yes, it's probably going to be interceptors, but if you can get instant locking ships there, you do want to use the instant locking ships.
Yeah.
So would frig holes be an issue if nullification wasn't a thing? Maybe it's not the frig holes, maybe it's the nullification that's the actual problem. Because killing frigs, let's be honest. If you can't kill a bunch of frigs that is coming in, like, who are you trying to evict? Like,
Well, you could throw an entire Confessor Doctrine through and put up a decent fight.
Yeah, but that's content in my book,
Go ahead, Teddy. No.
I was going to say, the issue is if you look at this from CCP's perspective, tons of content happen through these holes. So I think actually trying to get them to touch frig holes in any meaningful way is going to be such an uphill battle that it may not even be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think it needs so much more like data or even like time to look at that this trying to get them to see it as a potential even bad thing or something that might need changing is just next to an impossibility.
And I think the bigger focus is just getting more people into the space anyway, right? I mean, that's clearly a huge issue we have is our turnover rate of just getting new people in. So
do you go on?
As I said,
no, go ahead.
It might not be worth focusing on.
It's a symptom of more evictions happening because people are bored, because we have nothing to do. And then we have nothing to do because there's no one living here. And there's no one living here because our playstyles have been nerfed.
And the playstyles were nerfed because of surgical strike.
So it's this ever long, like, it's ever spiraling down. We have this just death spiral slowly, where everything goes like stacks on top of each other, but we're only blaming the thing that's above us, the thing that's at top. So we need to look at like the root cause of this, which is we have fuck all to do.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what I was going to say though, is like, do you think, so you need more people to come in, but your only content right now is evicting people. Do you think that evicting people is stopping new people from coming in?
I mean, it's definitely a deterrent.
It's hard, right? Because like on the one hand, evictions are as miserable as they are to run, they are a primary driver of focus. or a primary focus of content driving. I'm not saying that correctly. Either way, you get what I'm saying. So on the one hand, they do, like, we have had guys who have come and joined our group and, flown with us and enjoyed going to do evictions because, you spend a lot of time with each other and you talk and there's camaraderie and everybody's shaking hands and whatever, slapping ass and the whole deal. But is it a great long-term content driver? I don't think so. I don't like it as a content driver because I don't like doing them. But if it's between doing an eviction and doing nothing, I think a lot of people would rather do the eviction because at least that is doing something with your friends as opposed to just sitting around and playing Among Us.
Evictions
Whoa,
play a
no.
very important part in the risk and reward of wormhole space. It's what makes
Mhm.
them so lucrative. The second, at any moment, somebody can get hole control, and that's that. You're most likely going to lose if you can't contest the bid for hole control. So evictions do play an important role in the ecosystem here, but we're getting to a point where that's the only thing you can do. So it's just constantly. It was termed evictmas just over the Christmas period. It was just
Mhm.
eviction after eviction after eviction after eviction. I'm just like, wow, it's like what 6 corpse evicted today,
Yeah.
okay? And yeah, it was just nuts for that brief period of time.
Yeah, and so I said, like, I think right at the beginning I brought up the JSpace blue donut thing, right? I think people like to look at that and say those are the bad guys, they're responsible for this. And I'm just gonna say I think they're like partly right, like, but whatever. But I think it's interesting to finally see, like, for me at least, what the actual issues are, right? Like where this is actually coming from, why it is going in that direction. Why don't these guys have like something else they can focus on, right?
So
What?
when I lived in wormhole space, I never viewed the wormhole blue donut as an issue, right? It was for them evicting was purely because you decided to not undock and fight, and you decided to log everybody off. Back then, evictions were really based around, is this group a problem? Do they represent wormholes poorly? Or do they just continue to not undock and thus we need to evict them because they don't deserve to be here? It's changed now because there isn't any more activities other than evicting. But before, it was a real frenemy thing. For ERB, we were a new bro corporation, and we used Vextors and Brutixes at the time when trigs were huge. And of course, we were going to lose. It's just there was no competition there. You were going to lose that fight. But we would go out there, we'd whelp the fleet, we would maybe kill something, maybe kill 2 things, and they wouldn't even bother potting you. They would go, "That was a good fight, good show," and then roll your connection for you. It was a great ecosystem at the time because you weren't worried about getting evicted as long as you undocked and just whelped the fleet. And because you make so much ISK in wormhole space, it wasn't an issue, right? We could all lose Brutixes and Vextors and make that all back in an hour of crabbing. And it was awesome. And then it changed. When the surgical strike happened, industry changes happened, it just all went away. There isn't even a reason to hack in wormhole space anymore because you can take a bunch of filaments and go around nullsec and hack. And in nullsec, if you get a data or relic site, it's going to be hackable. It's not going to be some sleeper site. Yeah, there's not a lot to do for us other than evict.
All right.
I have a question.
But
All right.
yeah,
Mostly because I don't know a whole lot. Like, what is a sleeper site?
There's some sleeper sites for hacking where rats will spawn on canned fails, or the rats will already be there. And there's a couple of mechanics. Some of the sites are bugged, but if you go to any of the unsecured data or relic sites, there's a chance that rats are going to be there, spawn there, or just not because it's bugged.
Mhm.
So it's commonly told to all the new bros who want to go and hack in wormhole space, only hack pirate sites, the Charistas, Blood Raider, Serpentis, all that stuff. Only go and hack those because all the other ones have some intricate mechanics that play into it. So, like if you get a ghost site, it'll explode after some random amount of time. If you get a sleeper cache, you now need to do this whole hacking mini dungeon thing that's really, really complex. Or you're going to go into the sleeper ones and just die.
You say hacking mini dungeon. It's a very good way to say that.
Well, that's kind of what the sleeper
Yeah.
caches are. You got to
Yeah,
make sure
you're
that
right.
things get hacked in specific orders. Make sure you align the Sino riffs and things to move you around. It's pretty complex. So you just tell new bros only hack the pirate stuff.
But that would even be true if there weren't rats in there, because basically the loot in there isn't really worth it. So you have sometimes you have this Talocan can in there. That's gonna be good money. But otherwise, it's not gonna be worth it. Like I did it 2 times, and since then, never.
Right.
Never
The
again.
ISK you actually get from the sleeper data and relic sites is from the blue loot. And the only way you actually gonna get anything meaningful out of it is in like upper class, where you could have a Talocan spawn. And the M3 of it all is gigantic. I don't know if you guys have ever run a
Sorry, but Talocan can also spawn in C2s. It's not only in high class.
Yeah, it's just I find that it's more likely in high class.
Oh,
than
of
low
course,
class.
of course.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have ever done like the sleepless battlefields in Shattered Holes, but those things, it's like 500 M3, and it's gonna pay you like maybe 100 million.
What?
They're super difficult
I
to
mean-
scan down, and you need to manually move your probes in. So you can't just do like a pinpoint formation. You need to really close that in, and then
Mhm.
it's 500 M3, and it's just 100 mil.
Yikes.
That's more a symptom that T3s are just worthless right now.
Right.
Because their blueprints, and which means their blueprints are worthless.
Yeah, T3s also need to get fixed. That's more of an issue, I think, for a larger game sense. But I mean, it is pretty like the only T3s that anyone flies currently are Legions and Lokis, because they're the only ones that are any good. And Tengus and Proteuses. See, that's
a little bit.
what
A little bit.
Proteus is pretty garbage.
At
Proteus
least we
is-
use Proteuses as chemo Proteuses.
Proteus, and that's the
That's
thing.
got
Like,
one
I mean,
mode.
I've used chemo Tengus before too, right? But you would think that after the ham or after the short range weapon buff and hams got so much better, that the Tengu of all ships would have seen some kind of increased use case, but they're not, because they're squishy as hell and Proteuses are slow and they're just not that good.
They're
So
super vulnerable to cap.
they're and
And
Yeah.
Tengu's damage loss.
yeah, and yes, and the Tengu. It's just
I
If-
used to use a Tengu before Surgical Strike to solo rattlesnakes. And for ERB, that was huge because it got my industry guys out there to just go out there in a Vexer and just be like, I'm participating, and look we killed this awesome rattlesnake, and it gave them a real morale boost here.
yeah.
And then Surgical Strike happened, rattlesnakes went away, the Tengu is just like, yeah, I can just get alpha'd here. Sure, I can rep 2k DPS, but I don't have a whole lot of buffer
Yeah,
to play
my
with.
buffer is nothing. It's that and eliminating skill point loss on death for T3s, because it's a cute mechanic that doesn't really make any sense anymore because skill injectors exist.
I basically exclusively fly Loki at this point, and I straight up, when the second I die in a Loki, which thankfully isn't often, I just go, cool, I'll come back in 5 days.
Yeah.
For me, the skill loss is more detrimental than anything else, and for even some of the fits that we have that are cheaper, we look at this and just go, yeah, the skill points are more expensive than that entire ship. So it's like, why even fly a not blinged version? Because if you lose a not blinged version because it's not going to be able to compete in small gangs, you've lost more ISK in the skill points.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It just encourages people not to even get out there and learn the ship, because you constantly have to tell people the only way you're really going to learn the effectiveness of this ship is in a blinged ship. Like a Loki without a faction web. Why even bother?
Well, yeah, because you are. I mean, it's like anything else. Imagine, there are people who dock, pirate battleships because they don't want to risk losing them, and want to learn how to fly them in a case where they are safe in doing so. And if you don't want to do that on the test server, then, or rather, I guess what I'm trying to say is, people don't want to undock a T3C now if they've never flown one before, because they don't want the skill point loss, because the skill points are so expensive.
Right.
So they just don't do it. And then when they do have to do it, let's say they, a fight comes up or whatever, and then they have no idea what they're doing, then they're worse off for it. And they say, wow, this ship is garbage. I'll never want to fly it again. Why? I mean, it is a mechanic that has long since its use case has expired. Like, the skill points themselves now are replaceable because you can just buy skill points if you need to, and it is an inconvenience that does not need to exist. There's no
Yeah.
reason for it to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, the only way I can ever see anybody flying a Loki at this point is with a faction long point with a disruption, with a abyssal roll on it. So like you have a 32-kilometer point and 32-kilometer web, so that you can effectively control the grid. And then you're not using hams anymore; you're using heavy missiles, and then it becomes this great FC ship because you can really see the grid. But other than that, I can't see the justification for using anything other than a super blinged Loki, other than in like some kind of alpha doctrine.
Like solo, I mean, you can still do like heavy armor Lokis. They just get absolutely dumpstered by Triglavian weapons, which is why they fell out of
Yeah.
meta. Like that, if you look back a couple of years, the entire meta was Lokis, because they had a really good application bonus, and they had a really good rate of fire bonus, which meant that you could apply to
Good resist
guards.
profile on top of it.
Yeah, and then as soon as Triglavians became cheap enough,
that
Shack
explosive
Stack
hole
coming out.
sucks.
Yeah, they have a massive explosive hole. So Legions came back. Legions aren't that great. The fit that currently gets used in wormhole space for Legions is 2 mids, and it's just not fun.
Yeah, there's no you have, and one of those mids is, I have flown those where one of those mids is a cat boost, and the other one is a micro warp drive, and that's it. That's such a fun ship to fly.
Yeah, a lot of options.
So we're at an hour and a half, and I feel bad because I just like cut you guys off.
Oh, you're
good. But I wanted to kind of wrap it up, since this is about that time. But the last question I wanted to ask, which is the most important question, is how do we get a wormholer elected into the CSM?
Vote for them. I mean, seriously, if you're watching this show now and you there are 10 slots on the ballot. Okay, if you're in a block, chances are you're going to want to put your block guys at the top. Maybe you want to throw in an RP guy in there for something, or maybe a lore person in there for flavor. A little this, a little bit of that. There are still slots open. Put a wormholer on. Put me on. Put Teddy on. Put Evie on. Put Victor on. Any one of us could be on there, or all 4 of us. Also a good idea. The only way that you see change in game is if you have representation, and the only way that representation happens is if you vote for wormholers, well, in wormhole space to be specific. We can sit here and wax poetic all day long about well, we all need to ban. Just vote for wormholers. I am telling all of my guys in our group to vote for all of the wormholers. Obviously I want to put myself at the top, but other than that, it is a net benefit to everybody. For wormholes are better, the game becomes better. I feel it in my bones that if we can make wormholes a better place to play the game as a whole is a better game to play. And the changes that have happened without somebody being at the table. So put some people on your ballot, put 2 of us, put 3 of us, put 4 of us, do whatever you need to do. Put some of us on the ballot and make it happen. Like that is the way we do this. If you're a wormholer, you should have all the wormhole candidates on your ballot. I mean, it's, there are other great candidates out there and other people who we are absolutely going to vote for. Phantomite has done a lot of great work for wormholers over the last couple of years, or over the last couple of months. And there's nothing bad to say about that. And there are other great guys too. But seriously, there's a simple math that needs to be done here, and the math says vote for wormholers. Just do it. It's not that hard. It's a bunch of
I think the first step is actually to get wormholers to vote, because a lot of people are probably kind of bitter vets who are not really fond of CCP and the changes, and they're not fond of the CSM because there wasn't a wormholer in. So what I try to do as the first step, apart from getting people to vote for me, is to actually get all of the wormholers I know to get out to vote, to of course then include everyone who's a wormholer or counts himself as one. And I think what as I understood, the participation in CSM votes isn't actually that high. So even if we're not that many people like null blocks have, we have a lot of alts, and we might do something. And I hopefully,
And a lot of people, I just want to say, a lot of people in nullsec have a wormhole history, right? So Like, I don't even know how many guys I had in co-op. Like, some of them are in Odin's Call now, which is a wormhole group. Some, like, a lot of them, that's how the whole rage thing happened for Init, right? A lot of people in my co-op were actually ex-wormholers, and then that kind of, you know, got the ball going. And that's, I think, the case in a lot of nullsec groups. So those ex-wormholers should also think back, like, what was it? What made them a wormholer at some point? And maybe they should try to get someone elected. And I think the key thing you already said basically is you need to put more than just that one candidate you think is the best on the ballot. Like, don't do that. Especially in this case, I think the risk is minimal that only one guy, that you get like all 4 elected, right? Someone says like, I don't want 4 guys, 4 wormholers on the CSM. Like, all right, that's not gonna happen. So put all 4 or 5 wormholers, actually. Illuvian, we should mention too. He's also a wormholer. He couldn't make it today. Put those guys on the top. One of them will make it, right? One of them will make it, guys. And then you have a wormholer on, and then vote your, be it Piggles, be it Brisk, be it whatever, whoever is your block candidate. Then put these guys, right? Or put a Stitch for like small scale, low sec stuff, or a Phantomite. Put these small guys first, then put your block dudes on there, right? Those block dudes, they're not running in any danger, not being represented.
They don't need your votes. It's fine.
They are going to get on.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the key, right?
I do want to kind of highlight how dire this is too. We're only a handful of like major bad changes for wormhole space before this is going to change significantly. If we get something in the realm of like surgical strike again, it's gonna get real empty real fast. And I can highlight a story from when Chance was on CSM. He was the only person that opposed getting the ability to jump clone into wormholes. And he had to explain to every single person on the CSM that year why that was an absolutely terrible meta-changing thing, that you should absolutely not let people jump clone into a wormhole.
I'd heard that story, but I was not sure if it was true or not. So that's enlightening.
Yeah, you seriously, you do need a wormhole on to prevent that kind of a change from happening, especially if that change happens in addition to all the other things.
Yeah, I think that's
a lot of people
the
like
perfect
to,
example, actually.
A lot of people like to meme on Chance for his time as in space, but like he actually did do his best in representing us.
Maybe he saved wormhole space. And that's what I said right at the beginning. Why would you do that? Like, why would you do that to yourself? There's not much recognition coming with this, right? And that guy must have saved wormhole space. And people are like, yeah, did he good? Did he not? Like, nobody really knows. And then years later, people, like, this story comes out, kind of, and people realize, yeah, actually, that dude might have saved the entire wormhole space.
I mean, one of the great things about wormhole space is you can utilize it as K-space to get a competitive edge if you wanted to day trip. You want wormhole CSMs to make sure that risk and reward for you is being upheld. You do actually want wormholes when you get to... I mean, I learned the game in wormholes, so I'm not saying a new bro can't. But when you feel comfortable enough to come in here and utilize the space, you absolutely can, and you will see a true competitive edge in your ISK-making potential. You do actually want to keep the space healthy. And K-Spacers, you do actually participate in our ecosystem, so please come out here so that we can potentially be your content.
All right, so I'm going to end it on that comment in chat. 4 wormholers on the CSM would actually not be a terrible thing. And I agree, right? The reason why I said that is like the typical nullsec guy who never lived in nullsec and in wormhole space is probably not too into this. But I'm telling...
Actually, I'm going to end it on vote for Wibbly Wobbly Holy Woly.
Oh, no.
What the fuck?
Continue.
Fuck it, it's goddamn Captator. You son of a bitch. He did it again.
I'm creating that character now, by the way.
Unreal.
I'm sorry, Panda. You can continue now.
I think I lost my my point. But yeah, the typical nullsec guy who never lived in wormhole space, even you are interested in having one wormholer on, And you don't run the risk of getting half the CSM wormhole space. Right? Don't worry about that part. So get all the wormholers on top. Maybe put some small scale guys on there. And then vote your dudes. And you'll be fine. We'll get a good, I think, a good playstyle diverse CSM. And then actually CCP has 10 guys in the room that if they put any of these questions, like that example was perfect with the jump clone into wormhole space, right? And I didn't know that story either. If they walk into the room and say, hey, we want to do this, there's at least one guy there who can see if there's like a massive issue with it or not, right? So yeah, I think let's end it on that note. Thanks to you guys for coming on. I think that was really interesting, enlightening in some parts. Like I didn't know how hard the resist stuff and the faxes and stuff hit. I knew every bit was a little bit of an issue, but the combination I think is a little deadly right now, right? And I think it's important that there's someone who can highlight that. And I hope one of you at least makes it on, if not all of you. That would be kind of fun.
It'd be awesome if all of us make it.
That would be fucking ridiculous.
Imagine.
Wormhole has become very strong.
Yeah. And the guys on stream, everyone watching, thanks for hanging out. And thanks for the subs. And see you guys on the next one. And whoever gets the skin, congratulations. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
See you later, guys.
Adios.